Hey folks, today I'm going to show you a little bit about snorkels and why you might want them, how your air intake works, and what snorkels do to help you with water crossings, and also a couple other benefits that they may have. So yeah, stay tuned. In a few minutes you're going to learn all about snorkels. Here I go again on my own. Sorry, you can thank the Bearded Jeeper for that. He's got a video up where he's got a remix of that old song in the background, and it has been stuck in my head for days since seeing his video. So go check it out, the Bearded Jeeper. Alright folks, I've decided to switch to the point of view camera here just so I can show you guys around my engine bay. Now this is a 2005 TJ, or LJ, as you can tell. You've seen it in my other videos. This is the Jeep 4.0 liter that everybody loves so much. The air intake has not changed much on this engine all the way back to the YJ days, maybe even the 4.2 days. I don't know how the airbox worked on the 4.2, but I assume it was something similar. The YJ had a slightly different looking airbox, but it was in the same place and had a similar setup. I'll show you what some of the differences are there. The 3.6 and maybe the 3.8 in the JK, I don't know that I've ever actually worked on a 3.8, but the 3.6 I had for a little while. If I remember correctly, they had a similar airbox. Basically a box somewhere around headlight level, and I think that's done intentionally because of the height of the the fording line that you could get into in a Jeep. You'll notice that even the battery is lower than the air intake on these things. Okay, so I'm going to get into why that's important in just a few. Okay, so you've seen them, snorkels, right? They come out the side of your fender and go up the side of your windshield, or maybe on the driver's side, whichever. The idea, or sometimes they come out the cowl here. On some JKs, that's a pretty popular thing. On the TJ, you could build one that fits here, you know, so that the water line is above your hood. A lot of people they want to know why you'd want to snorkel. And I ran into a Facebook post where a woman was asking, you know, should I get a snorkel, and which snorkel should I look for? And there was a lot of discussion there. Oh, you don't need a snorkel for what you're doing, because she posted a video. Which, by the way, if you're watching this, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's informative. Anyway, it had a lot of naysayers. Oh, you don't need a snorkel. You had a lot of people saying, there's too many other things you have to change. Don't bother with a snorkel. And there's a lot of people just giving facts about what a snorkel does and what it doesn't. And that is what I wanted to make this video, to sort of clear up some myths. Okay, so a snorkel, its entire purpose is to take this intake, or perhaps this whole airbox, out and run this to some place that's higher than you. Because if you're fording water and the water is above your head, then obviously you've got other problems. But if it's at about eye level of the driver, that's about as deep as you think you may go. Now, I've seen some crazy videos of people driving literally underwater. Check out Dirt Every Day has an awesome video of Tube Sock driving underwater with a diesel. I don't know that you could do that with a gasoline engine because there's just too many electronics involved, but the diesel, you can get away with that sort of thing. Anyway, so speaking of snorkels, all right, so first I'm going to go through how the air intake works, which will help you understand why simply getting the intake out of the water is so important, and how a snorkel actually makes that possible. Okay, so I've also heard people say, oh no, you can totally drive up to your hood in water, it won't hurt a thing. Well, I'm going to give you an explanation as to why that might be possible. I'm not going to recommend that you ever do it, but if you ever get into that situation, I would recommend you get out of it as quickly as possible and get your engine off and inspect this airbox the second you're out of the water. Okay, don't shut it off while you're in the water, because that'll force water to get in here and flood everything. But okay, so on my TJ, this is the air intake. Okay, clean air is supposed to come in through here. Now you can see there's mud and whatnot in there, and I'll show you how it is that is not such a problem. Okay, so this goes into the bottom of the airbox. Okay, now this is roughly headlight level, a little higher than my headlight, to be honest. And in fact, it could be moved around a little bit if you want to put it a little higher, or you could extend this or whatever. But the thing you want to be careful of if you extend it is now there's a little more restriction on the air getting into your engine, and your engine won't run as well. So this has been designed by Chrysler to operate well on the 4.0. Now, there's a reason that people sell things like cold air intakes and high flow intakes and whatever, because that's supposed to increase horsepower and performance. This is relatively restrictive, okay? So in the air box, you'll find your air filter. Now, you could get like an inline filter. This is going to be hard to show you guys what I want to show you just because everything's in the way here, but I'm going to do my best. Okay, so now you might notice that it's probably time for me to replace my filter. I'll do that one of these days. Not today, though. Okay? So you also might notice there's some oil on my filter, and that's another problem. But, again, not for this video. So the filter is just what you'd expect. It is a paper filter. This one has this foam on the bottom to get out any smaller particles the paper might not. Okay, so that this helps keep the filter cleanish. And I believe this is the way they come out of the package. I don't think I've replaced the air filter on this. Yeah, that's glued on there. This is the way it came out of the package, okay? So I don't know what brand filter this is. I think it came with the Jeep. Whatever it is, it's made in Mexico. So awesome. Air filter. So here's that intake. If you can see that around this lid. I should have taken this clamp off so I could take the whole lid off of here, but whatever. There's a lot of things keeping me from moving it out of your way. Like, yeah, alright. So anyway, you'll see that this air box is, as you'd expect, a box. There are low points in the box. Hope you can see that on the GoPro. There's low points in the box so that water that does come in through here can pool in the box and doesn't end up in your intake. Okay, so that's how, if I get mud in here, and you see, there's mud at the bottom of this thing, right? So how did I not hydrolock my engine? I'll tell you what that is in a minute if you don't know. Because it pooled in the bottom here, and it just rested there, and it eventually evaporated, and it's gone, okay? The actual intake to the motor is way at the top of this box, right? So you could imagine, just put this back in place here without the filter in it. You could imagine if the water level is here, okay, it's not getting in the intake yet. A splash might, okay, and if it does, then it'll go into this box. And until it fills this box, it shouldn't get into this intake, okay? So if the water level is here, however, that means this, which when the engine is running actually has suction. It's actually pulling air in. It's not just breathing, it's pulling air in. If this is submerged, it's going to suck water in, okay? And it's not going to suck air in. And this box will fill up. And as it fills up and hits the filter, it'll saturate the filter, get through the filter, because that's what will happen when it's submerged. This thing doesn't stop water. It stops particles. It doesn't stop water. Water will get through this, okay? Once water's through the filter and gets into this hose, there's nothing to stop the water from going across this intake and into your intake manifold, okay? Once it's in the intake manifold, that water's going to get into your cylinders, and the pistons that are inside of your engine are going to try to compress it, because that's how your engine works. Your engine is essentially a big pump. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. There are cylinders in there that are driven by the camshaft and whatnot, and there's push rods that make the cylinders go up and down. You've probably all seen the animations about how an engine works. If you haven't, look it up. It's very informative about how you're supposed to deal with these things and why getting water in the intake is such a big deal, okay? It's not just because it gums things up or there's electronics. That's all things that are important. But what really matters is the only thing that's ever supposed to be inside of your cylinders that is above the piston is air and fuel. Air-fuel mixture. Atomized fuel, air. That's all that's ever supposed to be in there. If anything else gets in there that's not compressible, see, air and atomized fuel can be compressed. That's how that thing works. That takes air, compresses it into the tank, and that's how you get air pressure. In this case, when the piston comes up, it's compressing the air and the fuel mixture inside of a smaller space. When it gets close to the top, or maybe at the top, your spark plug fires and ignites the atomized fuel, forcing the piston back down again. That's driven by a push rod beneath the piston that drives the camshaft, which makes power out of the back of the engine. So, at its core, your engine is a explosion-powered pump. Okay? It just moves a camshaft, which then puts power out to the transmission. Okay? Now, if anything that is not compressible, like water, because hydraulics cannot be compressed, that's why hydraulic rams and whatnot are some of the strongest forces you can find inside of your shop. That's why presses are hydraulic, because the fluid cannot be compressed. This is physics, okay? if there's fluid in there, even just a little bit, just enough to get outside of the tolerance of that piston, when the piston tries to compress the air, the push rod that pushes the piston upward is going to buckle or break. Okay, and when it does that, the only place it can go is outside the wall of your engine block, and that's when you throw a rod. So that is why it's important not to get water in here. Okay, now what a snorkel will do is it'll either come off of here or here, perhaps. I've seen them done many ways, and it'll reroute this entire intake through the fender and up, or through the firewall and up, or however. I've seen guys simply run them in through the firewall up here and run them into the vent up there. Now that's only slightly higher than this, but at least it gets it out of the engine bay. It's a good, I don't know, 5-6 inches higher. It means you can go through water that's just that much deeper. Okay? So that's how a snorkel works. Now you'll notice I don't have a snorkel. That's not because I don't like snorkels. It's because I've been doing this for, I don't know, 17 years that I've been driving off-road. Probably 17 years that I've owned a Jeep, at least. And I've never needed a snorkel because I don't do a lot of water crossings. You'll also hear the haters that say, oh, well, snorkel's only the first step. You also have to do all of these electronics mods and whatnot so that they don't get wet. And they are correct to an extent. Okay, so right here next to this air box is your fuse box. Right there is your battery, right? There's also your spark plugs, okay, your alternator. All of these things, if they get wet, are not going to work properly anymore. So you need to waterproof this. You need to do something about the battery. You need to do something about your spark plug wires, right? I mean, look at all the things under here that are electronic. If any of them get wet, your Jeep's not going to work like you expect it to. And if that happens, well, you could be stalled in the middle of that pond instead of just fording through it like you wanted to. So yes, if you're installing a snorkel solely for the water crossing abilities, there's a lot of other things you need to take into consideration. However, that's not the only reason you might want to install a snorkel. The other thing that a snorkel will get you is so in here, as you can tell, things are dirty. Okay, that's because it's underneath the engine. The fan is right there running. All the dust on the trail, all the dust on the road that you encounter gets in through the radiator, goes into that fan, and gets blown around inside of the engine compartment. That means it gets in here. That's why there's this filter here. That's why, you see all that dust? That's the stuff the filter has prevented from getting into my engine. That's what this is for, okay? So, if you take a snorkel out of here, if you take your air intake out of here and up here, right? Now it's up out of the dust, or at least it's out of the engine compartment where a lot of the dust is. It's up higher. All the dust that's down here is getting in here into the engine compartment, getting blown out of the sides or whatever. But your intake is way up there, which means that all that dust isn't getting into the intake and into your filter. Now that doesn't mean you can run a snorkel with no air filter. It's obviously still very important to have an air filter. But it does mean that you'll get less dust into your air filter, which is good, especially if you spend a lot of time off-road. I talked to one guy, he's a guide. He actually runs a business that he does guiding. He says he's going through air filters so frequently that he's thinking about installing a snorkel just to keep the dust out of his air filter. I can't blame him. If you're off-road all the time, if you've got a trail-only rig that sees a lot of dust and grime, sort of like this one does, you're going to end up replacing air filters so frequently. And the dirtier your air filter gets, the worse your engine's going to run. So I think that's about it. Oh, the other thing that is up for argument, I don't know the numbers on it, some people say a snorkel will give you colder air into the intake, which is supposed to make the engine run better. Now, it's also more constricting because it's running at the fender and way up this way, so that may negate that. I don't know. That's up to you. Personally, I wouldn't install a snorkel for the performance gains. I would install a snorkel for the dust and for the water crossings, okay? So I wouldn't do it because it's a cold air intake, because at the end of the day, I think it's probably a wash. Alright, so I think that covers snorkels. If you guys enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like the video, comment. I'll get back to you. Please don't flame me. I get enough flame. Comment. I'll get back to you. If you have any questions, if you want to see anything else in detail, if you want to know more about things I've talked about, please comment. Also, you can now find me on Patreon. If you really enjoy what I do, I would very much appreciate anything you're willing to give me. which would just be great. If you can't do that, or you don't want to do that, please just subscribe to my channel, like my videos, comment, look at my other videos. I try to do the best I can for you guys. All right, so that's it for today. Thank you guys for watching.